Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, right? It just seems to me that the market makers, Bitcoin, and everything just simply do not care. With the amount of global liquidity that is entering the markets into the crypto, sphere, it is just continuously going up. I mean, the type of retests we are getting are just in the relevant zone and they just continue to go up. No big fundamental pullback as of right now. And the probability of us getting it is less and less each time we continue to go higher, right? The thing is, right, with global liquidity, we know it's been going up a lot. We talked about it in a previous video, right? We talked about it in a previous video, saying how, we are expected to be getting lots and lots of liquidity over the next few weeks at the bare minimum, right? At the bare minimum, because it is delayed roughly, usually, let's just say 75 to 90 days for the most part. And we are only getting this liquidity for about 30 days now, right? It might be 31 at this point. But the point is, at the bare minimum, the market should be pumping roughly another 50 to 60 days. And you know what? Yeah, that doesn't mean there won't ever be a pullback in the moment or some type of sideways movement. But with how much money is just getting pumped into the markets, with how crazy the world is going, things are just seeming to accelerate faster and faster by the day. And yeah, I mean, the markets technically do not need to have a fundamental pullback. We did talk about this, right? Once things are kind of getting the green light, they do not need they do not need to do a fundamental pullback, right? If we go to something like the weekly chart for Bitcoin, I really did expect after a week buy candle like this for there to be at least a pullback of a couple of $1,000s, right? Because it would have made a lot of sense, right? We saw a breaker structure. We saw a breaker structure on the lower time frame up here. We were expecting for there to be at least a liquidity sweep down to maybe 91,000, let's just say 600, which is not even a lot, right? Because we were already at 94K at one point. So, 3,000 this way or that way is not that much. But you can see, the market started to go crazy. Trump and China and everything started to go crazy. And we can see after showing, a weak bullish candle, we just said, screw it. We are continuing to pump. And the reality is at this point is that we most likely won't be heading back down to this 91K zone. The only thing I can see, right, in the future, hypothetically, without looking at any technical analysis, is if we just kind of start to range between this zone, have some type of liquidity sweep, do something like this, and then finally break out, right? But this is just, this is just theory at this point. This is just theory because technical analysis at this current moment does not suggest that we will be doing that, right? Because even if we go to something like the daily, right, we just take away the wicks, we can see that technically on the daily, we never actually broke structure, creating some type of lower low, right? We have lows over here. The lowest low we got was right over here at $94,370, but we never actually closed below it, never breaking structure on the daily, right? And then we just continue to push up. So the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, right? This is why I always say, when you have a great price, just simply click buy. Obviously not a financial advisor, but we did have a good opportunity just not too long ago. If we look at certain prices, right? Let's say we go to render, right? Render just a day ago, within the last 2 days, it was around, $4.10, right? Were there expectations it could go possibly lower to maybe like 375? Yes, but is there a big difference between 375 and $4? Not so much, right? Sure, you might get that extra little percentage if you, sell well, but I mean, you could always be saying that about anything, right? You can't be perfect in these markets, especially when it comes to buying crypto, right? Especially when it comes to buying crypto, sometimes you just simply have to pull the trigger, okay? Because the reality is, right, a couple cents this way or that way, 1% more or less, it's just too much pressure to try to get the perfect entry, right? If you bought something for $4 and went to $100, you would be happy. Sure, obviously, in another world, if you had an option to click a button to click and buy something for 375, you would click, okay, yeah, 375, and then sell it for $100 because you get slightly more. But that is just not how the world works, right? You got to remember your entries, right? Your entries are going to be a reflection, most likely, of how you sell. So if you are the type to be taking opportunities to be buying, let's just say at lower prices consistently, right? Lower prices consistently, then you are more likely to actually sell better prices in the future, right? Let's say it just topped out here. And the reason is it's usually either A, you understand your technical analysis, B, you understand, buy when it's low, sell when it's high. I mean, it sounds crazy, right? It sounds crazy. Three, you're emotionally, stable when it comes to the markets, right? You're not buying on green days. You're not buying on red days. Sorry, you are buying on red days. You're not buying on green days. You're not buying when there's a huge, big rally, expecting it to just go another 10x in a day, right? You're a little bit more either experienced, stable emotionally. Maybe you have the knowledge you need to understand technical analysis, right? So, usually it mirrors it. So if you're the type to buy relatively low, right, you're most likely going to be able to sell at decent positions in the future. And right now, if you're the type of person that, let's say, you bought somewhere up here, but then let's say you sold down here, but now you're considering rebuying here, right? I would really suggest for you to really reflect on what you're doing, because the next few months are going to be super crucial. And ladies and gentlemen, there is no room for these types of errors, right? The big pump is coming. Altcoin season is coming. You cannot be making these types of mistakes. Sure, now you can get away with it. If there's a big rally, right? There's a big rally and you buy at $12 instead of buying for $4.50, you're most likely going to be able to get away with it, because this coin, for example, like Render, has a high probability of, let's just say, hitting $70, right? Which we talked about. This Render can hit $70. But the question is, are you going to be the type to buy continuously up here, or are you going to be the one that gets ready to sell once we have this huge pump going? Because the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, right? If you're the type of person to be really emotional and, say it's over when things go down, you're probably going to be the type of person to say things are never going to go back down when things are pumping consistently for weeks and days on end. So you really have to reflect here. You really have to reflect here. Now we will dive into the charts a little bit. The reason why I've been talking about psychology more in some of these videos recently is because you have to realize that mental is practically just as important as technical analysis. In fact, I would say it's even more stronger, because the thing is, right, is just your technical analysis might not be that good, but there's always videos to watch, there's always people, there's always communities to join, there's always educators to follow, right? But if your psychology is simply not good, right, buy high and you're selling low, then you're most likely going to fail this crypto cycle, which is not what we want, especially on this sniper channel and this sniper community. But yeah, once again, we can see everything has been green. Opportunities to be buying are going to get more and more limited in terms of getting better and better entries. We talked about it, how objectively a lot of coins are still at a great price, right? We take, let's say, Render, for example. We talked about how Render was literally, at a 78% discount, 80% discount, roughly 81, 82. Now it's slightly less. It's probably at a 76% discount. So you ask, hey, do you think this is still a great price? I'd say yes. If 456 is what we're at right now, and we think we're going to end up at $60 Render, 70, maybe 100, 120, let's just say, I know I gave a big range, but even like a $70 Render, then why would $4.56 not be a great price? Especially that even just from the current area, we are down 70, roughly 76% at this point. And, we're not even considering the huge pumps that are going to be coming our way this cycle, right? So that is just something to consider about, ladies and gentlemen, right? We can see something like Ethereum has also gone wild in the last day, right? We talked about how the reversals were here on this channel. Just a couple of weeks ago, we even, put buy orders in the trading sniper Discord, right? There was something similar to like this. I don't remember the exact thing. It was something like this and something like this, right? So it was like a nice, I remember it was almost like a nice 1 to 4 that got hit. And we can see we consolidated for a couple of days, right? Because we had a big zone here. Now we are pushing up, and we most likely will start slowing down around 2100 Ethereum, right? Probably then again, consolidate for a couple of days, maybe a little bit downwards movement, and then again continue to 2400. Same thing is going to happen, right? Slow down, little dip maybe, boom, we're going to continue to 2900. So I expect this type of movement we most likely will not be getting big fundamental pullbacks at this point, right? Big fundamental pullbacks. It's most likely going to be every time we enter a zone, right? We enter this zone, we are just going to be consolidating, and then we're going to breaking above, right? Again, we're going to enter the zone, consolidate, boom, boom, boom. Like, it's most likely going to be like this at this point. The markets are accelerating. So that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.